Hello and welcome to the Supernatural Track here at Continual. I'm your host, Gail C. Martin, and tonight we are talking about the gritty underbelly. Supernatural roamed the back roads, small towns, dive bars, all-night diners. That was part of its magic. And we're going to talk about what made that so compelling and so different, and why it mattered for the Winchesters and their stories. But first, let's let everybody introduce themselves, starting with Lola.
My name's Lola Lariscy. I'm a writer, and I've been watching Supernatural since, my gosh, 21 years ago.
Okay.
Drink now.
Lynn?
Hi, I'm Lynn Kramer. I'm a professor at the University of South Carolina, and I started watching, I think, about 8 or 9 years ago.
Okay. Elektra?
I'm Elektra Hammond. I'm a writer and an editor, and I started watching when that very first episode aired, and I watched till that very last episode dropped on us like a ton of bricks, and I've been rewatching it ever since.
Very good. Thom?
I'm Thom DeSimone. I'm a content creator for Dragonmount.com. I started watching Supernatural when I got hurt at work and I was laid up for a month. And I think season 3 had just came out. And I binged all of it, and then just was like, then talked my wife into watching it, and then now we were just obsessed from then. Like, we fell in love with the brothers and everybody. Like, the characters are fantastic.
Okay. And I'm Gail C. Martin and Morgan Bryce. As Gail, I write epic and urban fantasy. As Morgan, I write urban fantasy, male paranormal romance. But my worlds are ones that Sam and Dean could walk into and feel right at home. Fell in love with the show halfway through season 11. Binge watched 11 seasons in time for the start of season 12. Went down the rabbit hole and haven't come back out since. Hope I never do. So, we've seen a lot of urban fantasy and paranormal movies that are set in big cities. Chicago, New York. Think of Harry Dresden, and a lot of the traditional urban fantasy happens in the dark places in big cities, which have their own feel and areas of reasons to be reasons to be fearful in the dark.
Yeah.
But Supernatural went to small town USA, Joe's Diner, Biff's Bar, the places that you might have felt safe, and proved that there was a lot more hiding in the dark than we wanted to admit. Let's start with, why was that so unusual? Lola?
Well, like you said, well, I would say most TV shows are set either in Los Angeles or New York, which annoys me because I've really never been to any of those. So it's kind of hard for me to relate a little bit. And I always get excited when a show goes to a different city or town. This not only goes to a different city or town, it goes to multiple towns. They're in Kansas a lot, which of course leads to a great thing with Dorothy of Oz and all that.
Okay. Lynn?
Well, I was just thinking, it's, when you stop to think about it, the big police procedurals and whatnot, they're in the big cities. The sitcoms are in the small towns. So you've got the difference. It depends on the genre. So I think, and with the urban fantasy, it being so new, it was kind of like, hey, maybe we can play with it a bit. Maybe we could do a little bit of both, because they do have some episodes in the bigger cities, but yeah, mostly they stick to the small towns and the surrounding areas and whatnot. So it's kind of like, maybe they're a combination of both.
Okay. Elektra?
Well, some of it too is the budgetary thing, because if you're set in New York, you can do some stuff in New York, like the infamous Law and Order episodes where they actually shoot stuff in New York that's really New York. But even the pit, aside from a few establishing shots in Pittsburgh, those are all shot in LA sound stages.
Yeah.
And it's not shot in Pittsburgh hardly at all, which is just so sad. Um, but and we got to see for Supernatural 15 years of the general Vancouver area playing all of America, because a small town is a small town is a small town. And it worked for all of us. I mean, unless they really didn't do their homework about what a town was like, they did pretty good. We believed them.
Okay, Tom?
Yeah, building off that, like same kind of thing, like and if you didn't grow up in like a major city, you can see your town or your neighborhood or whatever in a lot of the areas that they went to. So from like a writing perspective, it's smart to do that because any of the viewers can put themselves there. One of my favorite things to notice when they would do stay in like the small town motels and hotels and stuff was they would reuse the same sets over and over and over again and just like change the paint or like film from a different angle. So but there was like three different hotel rooms that I loved to see. There was always like when they first walk in the door of the hotel room, there would be like a glass block wall, like half wall there, and you can tell like which hotel room they're going to be in by what the entrance looked like, and I liked seeing that. But what attracted me to it was uh, uh, the way they interpreted like different folklores and mythology. Like they threw like a different spin on things occasionally. Like especially the vampires. The vampires were very different than other depictions of vampires and things, and I thought that was cool. And then seeing like the Wendigo episodes and like learning about different areas of the U.S. as like different folklores about things, and because they used real folklore and real folklore and mythology. But I liked seeing the writers' different interpretations of like commonly used tropes and monsters from stuff.
My theory is that Eric Kripke, the showrunner, is an evil genius, and he's very, very good at figuring out what scares us.
Oh yeah.
And how many of you folks, how many on the panel grew up in a small town, bona fide small
Oh, yeah. Farm.
Eh,
Okay, I did
I
too.
grew up outside Manhattan, so it was not a small town. It had a small
Well,
town feel, like everyone knew everybody's business, but it was probably 80,000 people.
Manhattanites still consider that to be small. I understand that.
That's fair. Yeah.
Um, I think in our cultural mythos, we think cities are where the bad things happen.
Mhm.
Cities are where crime happens and where monsters live, both human and otherwise, because um, there are abandoned buildings and there's the anonymity of having that many people.
It's easy to hide.
So there's a good place to hide. And the corollary to that is, well, then small town America is where you're safe. If
No.
if you grew up in small town America, you know the you aren't. The monsters are still there.
So are the
And
serial killers. So,
so are the serial killers, and there's a lot of kind of awful stuff that happens in small town America, made a little worse even because people pretend it isn't there. Where in the cities, people go, "Oh yeah, we're a city, we have a death toll every year. What do you expect?" So I think that Kripke plays on that masterfully by making the monsters be in our safe places, which means nowhere's safe. Um, what were some of give me one of your give me your top small town supernatural monster and why it scared you. Lola?
well, I rewatched an episode today to get kind of in the frame of mind. I watched the one with Charming Acres. The episode is Peace of Mind, season 14. Funnily enough, the main antagonist is from Stargate SG-1. So I'm like, oh, that dude. And I'm like, oh yeah, I remember he's bad. But so he's psychic and he can manipulate people just with his thoughts. He can kill people with his thoughts too. And he does this because he wants that old-fashioned 1950s, everyone in their place, don't say anything wrong. He wants that feeling to last forever. So he manipulates people into giving up their lives, not knowing they've given up their lives, and just lives this magical middle small town America life.
Okay. Lynn?
Well, when you ask it that way, I was like, any of the supernatural kind of monsters. And it's like, for me, the scariest ones were the human ones. And that brings me to the Benders. I know that episode is very contentious for people. Some people either liked it or they hated it because the monsters were human. But it's so easy to picture that actually happening somewhere and it being because it's so remote as well, them being out there, and you kind of go, well, how the hell did they get away with all of this? Easy enough to do if you grew up in the country, and which, like I said, I grew up on a farm, so to me the scariest even movies and whatnot were like Friday the 13th being out, or anything like that where they were using implements, farm implements or whatnot, like in Twister when they get stuck in the shack and they're looking around going, who are these people? It's like, yeah, that's kind of scary because it could so happen to you. So to me, yeah, it would be something like that.
Okay. Electra?
Um, I'm going to take you to Lilydale, the Mentalists,
Mm-hmm.
where there were actual real psychics there. And in a whole town where some of the people were kind of faking it till you make it, way too many of them actually had psychic powers. And trying to sift through who could actually talk to the spirits, which we know you can do, and in the world of supernatural. And some of them were just, good old-fashioned sociopaths. Some of them were just plain bad people. And like the Benders, they're the worst, man. I mean, people, they don't act sensibly like monsters do.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
a good sociopath is a real problem. And then, and then you can't tell what's going on and hiding people's bones. That one always gets me. And then the fact that, Lilydale really exists is just creeps you out beyond belief.
Okay. Thom?
I'm the worst at picking favorite anything ever because it's never the same thing. Like, but if I had, okay, I could narrow it down to a category of monsters. I think I like when they touched on the monsters that were like fairy oriented or like Celtic Gaelic. Like I liked when they did the banshees and the leprechauns and um the sirens and like selkies and the satyrs and stuff like that, stuff that touched on cultural things that like then they would like go into like how it was brought here by believers and practitioners and stuff. And I liked when they did okay, no, okay, if I had to pick one favorite monster, I think it would be the dragons, the way they did the dragons. I liked the dragon, the dragon that they met and the way that they were depicted and what they did and how they functioned. I thought that was a lot of fun. I thought that was cool. But no, yeah, I think the ones I was most attracted to were just like the ones that the writers put their own kind of spin on, or the ones that they adapted from like foreign cultures, like the kitsune or what did they call the fish tacos?
Yeah. I think one of the things that also plays into this, and Americans, Canadians, I'm guessing Australians, probably Russians and Chinese too, have when your country is most of a continent, it changes your idea of distance. So there's a running joke about folks who come over here, on vacation from England, and they want to go to New York on Tuesday and they want to go to LA on Wednesday and they want to swing through New
Yeah.
Orleans on the way. And it's like, no, no, no.
Do not laugh. I knew a Maine Coon breeder for reals in Maine who had a lady from the Channel Islands come to visit her who wanted to drop down to Florida, for Saturday afternoon. And if you live someplace that small, I mean, face it, England is the size of New Jersey.
Yeah,
They
it's
have
tiny.
no sense of scale. She thought they could just drive down to Florida for the afternoon.
And I think that adds to the kind of the isolation in Supernatural, because when you get off I-95 and I-81 and the really big highways, you're driving through a lot of farmland and you're driving
Mm.
through a lot of nowhere. And sometimes you don't even have good cell signal. And it gets dark out there.
And the banjos start playing.
Yes, indeedy. Um, and you're a long way from anywhere. And I think that that also kind of messes with our sense of safety and security, because anything could happen, and it'd be a long time till anybody found you. So I think one of the ones that I think used the small town piece very well, Lola and I just watched it earlier this week, was Wishful Thinking. And
Mm.
it's all about a cursed coin that people used initially with good but selfish intentions, making somebody fall in love with them, the picked on kid beating up the bullies, that sort of thing. But of course, all the wishes eventually went bad. But it was very um, horror on a small town, small element scale, came down to a coin. It wasn't a huge monster. It wasn't a pack of werewolves. It was bad human choices in a small town. And I thought it was very believable and also just very disturbing
Yeah.
because it was so believable. It was like, ah, there aren't werewolves. Well, you know what? There are some pretty crazy, selfish people who don't care who they hurt to get what they want, even if they
Yeah.
think it's a good thing. So I thought that's a piece of believability that comes with the small town piece.
It's not always selfish though. I mean,
No,
think about like the scariest Twilight Zone episode is the one where you've got Billy Mooney is like an 8 or 9 year old kid. And it's just that he doesn't understand right and wrong or consequences all that much. And he's just a kid.
That's why
yeah,
I love when people say all children are sociopaths, and that's it's because they don't understand consequences and stuff like that.
They,
But it's a funny joke.
they
yeah.
don't have that prefrontal lobe development about, consequences.
Exactly.
Now, two of the other locations we see come up a lot, and they have their own mythology, and that's dive bars and all-night diners. Um, Lola, what do you think of when you think of dive bars and all-night diners, and how does that play into what's their mythology and how does it play into the broader supernatural mythology?
Funnily you asked that because I made notes. I won't take everyone else's choice, so I won't name all of them, but um one of my favorite episodes is Swayze's Bar, which the levels of jokes is so funny because Patrick Swayze, Roadhouse, Swayze's Bar, and I looked it up. It's supposed to be Texoma, Texas, which plays, of course, to Dean with to Jensen Ackles. I don't know if Christian Kane is from Texas, but he definitely got the feel and the look about him. And it seems like it would be Dean's dream because it's just a hunters type bar and everyone's just hanging out in their plaid drinking beer and doing duets with Christian Kane, and there's a bar fight with a beer bottle smashed over the head. And to me that's kind of like Dean letting loose, Dean finally being able to just have fun. That's his idea of fun, which of course is why the Roadhouse was in heaven. And then of course diners that part of the appeal to the boys, I think, is they're generally 24 hours and they work off hours. They don't keep bankers' hours. So they know they can always find them pretty much no matter what time of night. In fact, one of the big ones is Biggerson's Diners.
I was
And
gonna
I
mention
looked
that.
up the wiki. It's actually in several episodes. The one where there's a waitress who suddenly can hear everyone's thoughts and they're all saying bad things about her and she takes her own life. And then the great sequence with Castiel where he's trying to hide from angels. And so you just see him sitting in the same seat, but different Biggersons. It's like this big montage of Biggersons. And that cracks me up. And I don't even know if Biggersons is a real place, but I think of it being like Denny's or IHOP.
Hmm. Well, and if you think about it, there are some chains where you could essentially sit in the same seat in the same place in every city, and it would look exactly the same.
And
Lynn?
some people want that.
Hmm. Lynn?
Yeah, I mean, at first it was like, well, geez, I can't think of any of the specific diners or whatnot but they hit them spot on. I mean, I grew up, the nearest McDonald's for us was like over 15 miles away, but we had a diner that was only like 3 miles away. So if we were going to go out late at night, we would go there or whatnot. And so they definitely got those feels. But yeah, the Biggersons, I was like, God, what was the name of it? And so yeah, that one especially because like you said, you could take it and put it in any different city or town because they would keep the same themes and whatnot. And it's like kind of like a Buc-ee's. You see the Buc-ee's and how they're built. They might be all different sizes, they might be all different things, but they're going to serve the same things. They're going to have a lot of the same ideas, or with IHOP or whatever. They might have local dishes, like the mystery spot when they had the pig in a poke at that one. So you've got, but those add like a little different flavors to the different ones. But I think they did those spot on. I mean, you could see anywhere, and it kind of grounded the different episodes and stepped away from the weirdness and it's helped us deal into the reality of it.
Okay. Electra?
Um, I don't remember what the name of the place was, but Tall Tales, where we first meet the trickster, they stop and they eat at the same restaurant every morning. And Dean has the special every morning just before he dies. And it's that same repetitious movement. I mean, I love a good diner. And
Sorry, it was Tall Tales, not Mystery Spot. I flipped them.
you
But
were
you're right.
looking at the same one. Yeah.
Yep.
It's that same thing. And it's yeah, that and Biggerson's reminds me of half a dozen different places where I've eaten. And there is sometimes a joy in being able to pull off the road someplace you've never been and know I know what the menu will look like there, and I know I can get something to eat and get back on the road.
Hmm. Absolutely.
It's important sometimes. Sometimes you want a leisurely dinner and explore fun things. Sometimes you just want to know, I know they're going to have that turkey sandwich I like, and I can get the heck out of here.
Or smothered and covered. Is that Huddle House or Waffle House? I get them mixed up.
Waffle
They
House,
have the
smothered,
scattered,
covered, and
smothered,
chunked.
and covered. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's my
um,
go-to.
and Tom?
I might have grown up like in a more city oriented area than you guys, but we still had our fair share of 24-hour diners. In fact, the one of the diners that wasn't far from where I lived, and I used to go to a lot because it had probably the best mozzarella sticks I've ever eaten in my life. I don't know, but I don't know if it's just like a nostalgic memory that I think that, or if it was for real. But at this moment, if you ask me, that's what I would say. And I think that's the same for like Dean and Sam, that it's like it's reminding them of like, their childhood with their dad when it was a little bit, even though they were still hunting and like doing, dangerous things, it was probably like like a security blanket thing, something that's familiar no matter where they are. So they can, if they go to the diner, he always got a burger, and like it would remind them of a time from, of their childhood. Though my favorite one, and I remembered the name when Elektra was talking, was Fat Max Rib Shack. It appeared in a few different episodes. Like I want to say at least half a dozen of episodes that was in, but it reminded me of uh, uh, It was I don't know if you've ever heard of the place Famous Dave's. There was like a local restaurant that was like a bite off of that was called Fat Dave's, and it reminded me of that place. And it was they did barbecue and all that stuff too. So, but that one was I always was fond of that one.
You know, I think that the roadside diners come into it in a couple of different ways. During the daytime, they're safe and secure, and you know what you're going to get. And that's especially helpful if you're a female traveling alone. You want to know you're not going to get hassled, that you're probably safe to get gas and use the bathroom, grab a bite to eat. I've always done long road trips with my family, both as a kid and now as an adult. Some of them in grad school by myself. And it changes at night. Those roadside diners, it's not the same people in them at midnight or 2 in the morning that you saw, at 4 in the afternoon. It's the long haul truckers. It's the people who you wonder what they're running away from or what they're running toward because they're by themselves and they don't look real happy. It's, you don't see families at those hours. Um, it's a different vibe, and it's more so with the neighborhood dive bar. There's the neighborhood bar, and that's the one that has you know, um, it's family friendly. Maybe you wouldn't take the kids there, but you're pretty likely not to get in a fight.
Those places usually have a restaurant with it, like a
Right.
Ruby Tuesdays or something.
But even the standalone ones, they're sort of respectable, even if they serve alcohol,
Yeah.
which used to be a bigger thing than it is now.
Yeah.
But then there are the dive bars, and they're the ones that you don't go into unless unless you can handle yourself in a bad situation, possibly armed. They're scary places. And they're a little more on the rough and tumble side. That's also got a definite vibe. And Sam and Dean especially, was very comfortable right there. He could handle himself. Anybody who caused him a problem, woe betide them. But you could also see Sam sitting in the all-night diner and being pretty confident no one was going to mess with him. Um, so I think that's another place where Kripke kind of plays with our head in that there's those places during the daytime and then how everything changes at night.
Yeah.
Um, so thinking about the open road and the diners and the diners, dive-ins and drive-ins and dives
Yeah.
and all of that.
Great show.
Yep. Um, how do you think they contributed to Sam and Dean as they were growing up? How did that shape them growing up in the back seat of the Impala as their dad dragged them around? And what did that mean for the characters when they became the adults we were watching? Lola?
Well, I imagine they were used to not having quote unquote home cooking, which I can relate to because my family, all of our food came out of boxes or cans, so I never had real home cooking either much. So they kind of got used to family time being around a table with a booth. And you have to pay for every meal, so you better hope you have at least, I guess, $10 back then. Um, and not stationary, obviously. They didn't have a kitchen that they would eat in or a dining room, the same dining room that they would eat in every night, which maybe is why they wanted to go to a Biggerson's or something like that for some kind of familiarity. But yeah, they just didn't get the trappings of having family, including, eating at the same place every night.
Okay. Lynn?
It got, yeah, the whole family. I was thinking about the family cooking thing. I mean, some of those diners would be probably the closest they ever got to home cooking or family kind of cooking, but that was their home. those places were their home. It made me think of we were talking when you were mentioning, Gail, the road trips that you took and take as a adult. When we were kids, we would either drive to Florida or Texas or Jersey or whatever. Once a year, we went on a major road trip. Dad's go-tos were truck stops. He trusted truck stops for food, and gas and everything. He felt that they were, pretty safe and whatnot. He trusted truckers and Howard Johnson's. So the Hojos, I mean, those I grew up thinking those two places, even when I hit and I started traveling as a, young adult in college, those I would gravitate towards them because we never had a bad experience at any of those. And it kind of felt familiar and like home, and it's nostalgic as well. I mean, would I go to some of those places now? Not necessarily, but we've got our own versions today.
Okay, Elektra?
Another piece of this is the familiarity with the dive bars and the 24-hour diners. That's one of the first places the boys would go when they needed to pick up work, when they weren't, playing pool shark. We saw Sam more than once pick up work as bartender. And, if you can mix drinks, there's always work for you.
Or poker games.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay, Thom?
poker can get messy,
Yeah.
but if you can pour drinks, there's always someplace you can find work. There's always somebody who needs a bartender willing to pick up shifts that nobody else wants, especially somebody like Sam who can calm down a rowdy room.
Solid point.
Mhm.
He's got that size.
Mhm.
Yeah.
As somebody who's shorter and just, no matter how much I can project, I'm still 5'2". I cannot calm people down the same way somebody who is 6'5" can. It just isn't the same.
Okay,
Fair.
Thom?
I feel like other than their personal significance of like the those bars and diners and stuff being like a security blanket, we've been mentioning, I think there's also like a level of like a self-defense of not wanting to go to the places that you would normally see, or at a time that you would normally see normal people and families being happy and like things like that. Because I feel like especially Dean avoided that, like throughout the entire series. Like he would avoid being places, like he felt more comfortable in a dangerous dive bar than in like a diner during the day when there were children and families and stuff there, just because like, that I'm sure that's a life that he's always wanted and never thought he could ever have, and like things like that. There's a lot of angst tied up in Dean, centered around having a family and or not, and if he could be normal or not, or loved or not. But also, like, I feel like diners and drive-ins and dives and all of those things have like a very spiritual significance, in that they're so, even though they're ephemeral, in that like the people that go there, like often the people that are there every day will never be there again, especially in the US, because, like if you're a long road trucker, yeah, there's a good chance maybe you'll repeat the same routes or whatever, but there's also a good chance that you're not going to, or like, the next time you go on a road trip with your family, you're not going to drive through that same town. So this could be the one and only time you're ever there. But there's a spiritual significance to that, of how much energy gets brought into those places. And there's a reason why, like, the common place in a lot of fantasy and even science fiction is like a watering hole of a type of place, like an eatery or a bar or something like that, or an inn, a common room, you see in a lot of fantasies and things. So I think there's a strong spiritual significance to it too, like for the paranormal level of supernatural as well.
Kind of like an informal train station.
Mhm.
The migration and
Yeah, exactly.
Which kind of reminds me of Spider Robinson's Callahan's Cross Time Saloon series, because where else would people meet and mingle from time travel? A bar. That makes perfect sense.
Oh, there was one other thing. Sorry,
Yeah,
that
that's okay.
you just reminded me of. Your original point was like, them going to them as children too, and I feel like that was a really good thing for them because they got exposed to so many different people and so many different types of people, and like uh things that kids wouldn't normally see, and especially for kids that are growing up to be hunters, it would be much more beneficial to see all these different vocations and people from all different places all over the world too, because you never know who you're going to run into in those types of places, especially when you start dealing with like truckers and people like that, because who knows where they're from. So they and then that was also how they would bring in a lot of other like foreign country folklore into it too, with travelers or people coming from those countries to here for either in passing or in like a permanent situation like that. I forgot what place they went to that was like there was a lot of Germans there, and then there was like or Polish people, and then the Striga were there, and that's like more of like a Czech, Eastern European witch type creature, and I liked seeing that too.
Yeah, I think um, it is, as we were saying before, it's the energy, how much the energy is different based on whether it's daytime and you've got families and couples and regular travelers versus the night shift. And the people working the night shift, the people who choose to be in a bar after midnight, the people who are at an all-night diner often seem like the lone wolves or the lost boys. They're they ought to have somewhere else to go, but they've gravitated here because there may not be anywhere else. And that's a very interesting, you can start a lot of stories from that point, and Supernatural does. But I think one of the most um, calming things to me is, and I think the line was in the episode Baby, they were never, in fact, homeless because they had the Impala
Mm.
and
Yep.
they grew up in the back seat. And so she was their home. Well, folks, we have had a great discussion, but we are out of time. So I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to tell us where to find you online. Lola?
My name's Lola Lariscy. Um, I have a website, lolalaracy.com. I'm on Facebook, not on Twitter. You could Google me. You'll find me and a bunch of dead old ladies who are probably all from Sylvania, Georgia, because that's where my family comes from. Sylvania, Georgia.
Lynn?
You can find me on Instagram or Facebook, whatever. That's just Lynn Kramer. Not very original.
Elektra?
Elektra Hammond, you can find me at untilmidnight.com. That's got links to pretty much everything. And I do most of my socials on Mastodon. So go out on Mastodon Mondays from 7 to 8 and look for the hashtag WriteFant, where we get together and answer random questions. Oh, sorry, questions on a random topic for fun and, well, fun. And everybody is welcome to join on in.
Okay. Thom?
Uh, I do most of my content creation through dragonmount.com, which was founded as a Wheel of Time fan website, but the live streams and things like that we do branch into lots of other stuff. One of the things that we're currently doing right now is rewatching the Clone Wars, the animated series, with live with fans, and I have a different guest on each week. So there's a little something for anyone that likes nerdy movies, TVs, books, things like that.
Sounds like fun. I'm pretty easy to find at gailzmartin.com, morganbryce.com. If you spell those right, you'll find me on all the major social medias. So, but I'm always here on Continual. So thank you very, very much for a fantastic panel. And thanks to all of you for watching and listening. There will be more Supernatural coming up soon on Continual. So we'll see you online.